This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch for this Friday, February 7th. I'm Mark Martin. President Trump is taking a victory lap after being acquitted by the Senate, but some Democrats are determined to continue investigating him. The House Judiciary Chairman says lawmakers will likely subpoena John Bolton to learn what he was prepared to tell the Senate. Meanwhile, some Republicans are going on offense. Several senators are looking into possible conflicts of interest by Hunter Biden while his dad was vice president. Beyond the headlines, the president used the stage of the National Prayer Breakfast Thursday to tout his work to protect religious liberty.
In America, we don't punish prayer. We don't tear down crosses. We don't ban symbols of faith. We don't muzzle preachers. We don't muzzle pastors. In America, we celebrate faith. We cherish religion. We lift our voices in prayer, and we raise our sights to the glory of God.
If Democrats continue to go after the president, some political analysts believe they'll do so possibly at the peril of some vulnerable Democrats up for re-election in November. In a speech Thursday afternoon, the president said he's been the victim of a Democrat-led witch hunt since he was elected in 2016.
We've been going through this now for over 3 years. It was evil, it was corrupt, it was dirty cops, it was leakers and liars, and this should never, ever happen to another president, ever.
Trump slammed Democrats. He called House Speaker Nancy Pelosi a, quote, horrible person. He also zeroed in on Republican Senator Mitt Romney, who was the only member of his party who voted to convict him in the impeachment trial. Israel's defense forces and Israeli police are on high alert after dozens of Israeli soldiers have been injured while 3 Palestinians have died in recent clashes. The terror attacks and fighting come days after the release of President Trump's deal of the century. One of the latest terror attacks took place here at Jerusalem's old train station Thursday. A terrorist drove his car into a group of Israeli soldiers and wounded 12, one seriously. One group that monitors Palestinian media says the Palestinian Authority is fueling the violence, and Israeli Prime Minister put the blame on the PA president.
And
I want to say something to Abu Mazen. This is not going to help you. Not the stabbings, not the car rammings, not the shootings, and not the incitement. We will do whatever is necessary to defend our security, to determine our borders, and to secure our future. We will do it with you or without you.
The Palestinian Authority wants violence, it wants terror, it wants the world to know that its people are angry about the Trump plan. Whether its people are angry or not, we don't know. We know the leadership is angry. It could be that the people would like peace, but the leadership is interested in a terror wave.
Our Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem with the latest. Chris, can you describe the situation for us now?
Yeah, right now, Mark, it's fairly quiet, but I would say the atmosphere is tense as well. One of the keys on Friday is actually what's going to happen on the Temple Mount. This is the day of Muslim prayer. There were about 15,000 Muslims up there on the Temple Mount, and we understand there was no incidents up there. Actually, you might see behind me there's rain clouds, so the rain actually might have helped. We talked to the head of the spokesman for the National Israeli Police. He says, as far as we can tell right now, the security assessment from their point of view is a bit undetermined. It could go to another wave of terror, or it actually could quiet down. We'll see what happens. Certainly, the Palestinian Authority, as we saw in that soundbite from Itamar Marcus, really wants the people to go ahead and protest against the deal of the century.
What role does incitement and intimidation play among the Palestinians?
Well, Mark, that's a great question because the incitement and intimidation have a huge role in what happens among the Palestinians. First of all, incitement. There's been decades of incitement on Palestinian media, really brainwashing many of the Palestinians to kill Jews. They glorify terrorists. I'll tell you a name a lot of people may not understand or have heard about, Dalal Mughrabi. Back in the 1970s, She was a terrorist, a Palestinian terrorist who was responsible for the murders of 38 Israelis, including 13 children. Her name is on many Palestinian schools. She's glorified in Palestinian textbooks. And so intimidation, let's talk about that. Actually, just before the unveiling of the deal of the century, there was a Palestinian official who said anybody who accepts the plan, it would equal treason. So collaborators, those who would accept this, who would be called collaborators by some Palestinians, really risk their lives. One last thing, Mark, you know, Natan Sharansky, the famous Israeli politician and refusenik back in the Soviet Union, said that freedom is measured by what happens in the public square. Could you go out and actually express your views? We were in a Palestinian village just yesterday, and we went through one of those squares, and I thought to myself, really, there is no freedom of speech among the Palestinian Authority in many ways, and so they risk their lives. So intimidation and incitement really have a huge role to play in the Palestinian life.
How is the deal of the century being received by the Israelis, Chris?
Well, Mark, there's a variety of reactions. If you go to Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel, some will reject the idea of a Palestinian state. They don't want that form. They consider that would be a mortal danger to the Jewish people and to the Jewish state. Although some people have accepted it because the plan does call for Israeli sovereignty over many of the Jewish communities or all of the Jewish communities in the West Bank and the Jordan Valley. So they accept that part of the plan. Some on the left, they would say that that it doesn't give enough to the Palestinians. They would want to see Israel go back to what's called the 1967 borders, give back all of the West Bank. So there is a variety of people here in Israel, whether or not they accept it or reject it. It really is going to depend in just a few weeks, March 2nd, when the Israelis will go to the polls for their third election in the last year.
And finally, what do you have planned for this week's Jerusalem Dateline, Chris?
Well, this week on Jerusalem Dateline, Mark, we have an update on the situation. We have analysis of the peace plan by David Parsons. He's with the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem. He's been following this for nearly 30 years. And we actually have a story on Jerusalem as well with Scott Ross, talking about why Jerusalem is so important to the Jewish people. And finally, Mark, we have a breakthrough story on an Israeli company who's taking on the coronavirus. They have a mask they think is unique. It's really going to help this plague that's spreading around the world, and they think that it actually fulfills biblical prophecy.
God has really gifted his chosen people. All right, Chris Mitchell, our Middle East Bureau Chief, thanks so much for your time, sir. And you can watch Jerusalem Dateline tonight on the CBN News Channel at 9:30 Eastern. New reports out of Nigeria indicate Muslim Fulani herdsmen have launched more murderous attacks against Christian villages. Morning Star News reports at least 32 people were killed and a pastor's house and church building were burned down in 2 nights of attacks last week in Plateau State by the Islamic militants. Save the Persecuted Christians is calling for a special envoy from the United States to be sent to Nigeria and the Lake Chad region because of the extreme violence against Christians there. The group is a multi-faith coalition of nearly 200 civic, faith, and community leaders who pray and advocate for the more than 300 million persecuted Christians around the world. Coming up, Franklin Graham is told he's being banned from preaching the gospel in parts of the United Kingdom. What it means not only for the evangelist, but for every Christian.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Welcome back. A third venue in the United Kingdom has canceled an appearance by evangelist Franklin Graham, bowing to pressure from LGBTQ activists and their allies. I spoke with conservative and cultural commentator Todd Starnes about Graham's response and the significance of what's happening. Todd, tell us what's happening with Franklin Graham in the United Kingdom.
So Franklin Graham, much like his father did many, many years ago, was going to host a series of Christian rallies across the United Kingdom. They're still planning to do that, but there's been a significant amount of blowback from the militant LGBT community and also the government at large. They're targeting these venues that the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association had already contracted with to hold these big rallies, and they're literally tearing up the contracts. And the reason why is because the local gay community is outraged. They say that Franklin Graham's message that marriage is between one man and one woman is offensive. And if he is allowed to preach, if those church services are allowed to go forward, that those could harm members of the LGBT community.
You wrote in your book, Culture Jihad, that militant homosexuals want to silence people of faith. And you say if they can silence Franklin Graham, they can silence anyone?
Oh, yes, they can. And they are. And that's why this is so important for Christians around the world to stand up and pay attention to what's going on. You know, I wrote in my book about a guy by the name of Tim Gill, who is a tech giant. He made millions, and is using his fortune to go after religious liberty bills all over the United States. And he did an interview with Rolling Stone. It was a fascinating interview, but he had a line that was really chilling because he was talking about evangelical Christians. He said that their goal was to punish the wicked. Punish the wicked. That's people like you and me, people who follow the Bible's teachings on marriage and sexuality. So this is a big deal, and we've got to stand up. We've got to fight back. If we do not, we will be silenced. And I can promise you this, they're not going to stop by, they're going to shove us back into the church house, but they're not going to stop there. Eventually, they're going to shut down those churches.
Well, we definitely need to pray as Christians. What was Franklin Graham's response to the effort to ban him?
Well, I asked Franklin about that. Can you consider relocating to a large church? And he said, absolutely not. He said that's what the Soviets did back in the day. They shoved all the Christians into the church house and would not allow them to come into the public marketplace. So they have a team of lawyers, and they're going to fight back. These were binding contracts, and they're going to have to honor those contracts. So good for Franklin Graham. And this is a message for the rest of us as well. Don't capitulate. You got to stand up for your rights.
Most of us would think that these activists would respect the right of Christians and people of any other faith or group to believe what they believe, but they don't. Why do you think this is so?
You know, it really is interesting. Those who preach tolerance and diversity are, in fact, the least tolerant and diverse of all. And that's what we're seeing here. And I write about this in Culture Jihad. There are efforts underway to not only silence religious liberty, but also to silence free speech. They want to ban books like To Kill a Mockingbird and Little House on the Prairie. They're trying to ban speech on campus that they find offensive. This is not conservatives. This is a movement by the left that's doing this. So we've got to stand up and we've got to fight back. And if we do not, nobody's going to do it for us.
Break it down for us. What can people do to respond to what you call culture jihad?
Well, I would first of all encourage them to read my book so they get a good idea of the lay of the land. Where are we right now in this fight for freedom? Because I believe that freedom of religion, that is our bedrock, that is our foundational freedom. And they've been chipping away at that freedom for decades now. And here's the problem. If they're able to eradicate or marginalize religious liberty, then every other one of our rights is in danger of being taken away. So we've got to mobilize, we have to stand up, and we have to be willing to fight. That's a big part of it. Not capitulating, not going quietly into the good night, but taking a stand. We have to be winsome in the way we fight back, but we have to fight back.
All right, Todd Starnes, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Still ahead, how faith scored at the Super Bowl and how it's having an impact long after the game.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Thanks for sticking around. Time now to talk sports with Sean Brown. Welcome, Sean. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Mark. Good morning.
All right, well, let's talk about the Super Bowl. It did not disappoint. Incredible comeback by the Chiefs to win it. But what are some of the faith headlines that came out of all of this?
Yeah,
I know there were a lot.
There were, man. You know, it's always hard because sometimes I go in, I have maybe 2 or 3 names from each team. This time, man, both teams didn't disappoint in that regard, man. And it's hard to root for one or the other when you've got so many solid guys on both teams, man. Guys like, of course, Patrick Mahomes from Kansas City. He told me, he said, his faith allows him to be who he is and be comfortable with that. That's huge, huge.
It is.
Kansas City guard, Stefan Wisniewski. We're here because God wants us here. He was talking about both teams, that we were destined to be here for this. And just to recognize the magnitude of that and the opportunity that they have is phenomenal. San Francisco 49ers running back, Raheem Mostert, he has Psalm 23 inked across his chest and then recited the whole thing. This is at opening night.
Wow.
So that's the kind of platform we're talking about. Of course, Emmanuel Sanders, who I've talked to before, is another one. And so I love these guys using the platform they have. They get it. It is the biggest game in football, but we're going to enjoy it and we're going to perform for an audience of one. I love it, man. Just so awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. You're right. Well, I understand there were several Hall of Fame inductees named the night before the Super Bowl, including that is Isaac Bruce of the St. Louis Rams. Talk about what he tweeted about that honor.
I will. At first, I got to point out my guy, Troy Polamalu, who I had a chance to interview a few years ago. Another solid man who's among these guys and just a solid believer. Isaac Bruce tweeted, he said, God is good and gracious to me. Tonight, we rejoice in his faithfulness. Even at this height, the height of this is where all the NFL players want to be. This is the goal. They can win a championship, and then they want this here, the Hall of Fame. And to be on that stage and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to give credit to where credit's due. Because he is a guy who, I've heard a little bit of his story, he thought football was everything. And he realized when he got everything, it wasn't. And he said, you know, I need something else. And that's when he gave his life to the Lord around 23, 24 years old. And now he's at that landmark of becoming a Hall of Famer. And he says, you know what? Praise the Lord. Thank you. This is all you. And it just shows his level of humility and recognize that God was all a part of this. And it's just fantastic.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, a moving memorial this week for Kobe Bryant and his daughter and the others that were killed in the tragic helicopter crash. Talk about that.
Well, they had a kind of a tribute earlier last weekend, and it was phenomenal, very, very moving. Kobe Bryant he addressed the crowd so well, saying that this is about family, love. He acknowledged all of the lives lost, all of the families. And just did a tremendous job. You know, former teammates of Kobe's, you know, they shared, and it was just a moving night. The actual memorial service, though, will be February 24th, which is significant because 224, 2 is actually his daughter Gianna's basketball number, and of course 24 is his number, so there's some significance there. But all of the families will have their memorial at the Staples Center on the 24th of this month, and that's going to be so moving. It's going to be big. I'm glad they're doing it together because they were together, and it's just a great celebration of life for all of these people.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Well, talk about what's coming up on Going the Distance this weekend.
Going the Distance, you know what, man? It's I'm gonna show. I know that I don't know if you're familiar with Pat Williams. Longtime Orlando Magic, one of the co-founders.
I've interviewed him a couple times.
He's a huge guy, and he was on Fox and Friends talking about Kobe and the fact that, you know, people are really starting to think about their own mortality. And so I'm going to share a little bit of his story. He just being an owner, and then just sharing his latest book, man. And he's phenomenal. He's written several books, but this is the one that you want to catch up to, and it's actually fantastic. So be ready for that.
Okay. Sean Brown, our sports director, thanks for your time, sir.
Thanks, Mark. Always good to be with you, man.
Yeah, you as well, sir. Well, you can catch Going the Distance with Sean this weekend, like I said, Saturday evenings at 6:30 Eastern and Sunday nights at 7:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. Looking real serious there, Sean. Well, coming up, the Oscars are this weekend, but even before the event, there's been some criticism when it comes to the nominees.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religion he has, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
The Oscars will be presented this Sunday, but a controversy surrounds the award showcase. It involves the Academy, which votes who is going to be nominated. As Charlene Aaron shows us, the lack of nods for people of color once again takes center stage.
Inside Hollywood, the Academy is often referred to as a club. Its members vote how they want to vote, which could result in politics and pocketbook over quality. In 2015, the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite became the clarion call for diversity at the Academy Awards. Now, 5 years later, some see little to no progress. Harriet star Cynthia Erivo is the only person of color nominated in this year's acting categories, a big disappointment for many calling for more inclusion.
The pattern over the last few decades has been a couple of steps forward, a couple of steps backwards.
Actor Joaquin Phoenix addressed the issue while accepting the British Academy of Film and Television Arts Award for his role in Joker. He said, "I think that we send a very clear message to people of color that you are not welcome here. I don't think anybody wants a handout or preferential treatment, although that's what we give ourselves every year. I think people want to be appreciated and respected for their work." CBN Entertainment reporter Ephraim Graham says he's surprised high-quality films featuring African Americans weren't nominated this year.
I think that's a surprise to not only myself, but to lots of people. I mean, many were expecting nominations. We expected a nomination for Eddie Murphy for Dolomite. We expected more of the cast and directors from Harriet to be nominated. I remember watching Just Mercy and seeing Jamie Foxx's performance, and everywhere he went, everyone saying, Oscar-worthy performance.
In 2016, the Academy announced major changes to its membership, which now includes 16% people of color. Movie Guide founder Ted Baer has commented on the issue, saying Academy voters do not have an objective standard. The recent #OscarsSoWhite controversy reveals a diversity problem, but the solution presented by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences will not fix their problem because their standards are not principle-based. The voters do not have an objective standard by which they all vote, and both the nominations and the outcry for the lack of diversity in the nominations reveals the flimsiness of the criteria for what good filmmaking is. Meanwhile, the Christian film Breakthrough received an Oscar nomination this year for Best Song. But Devon Franklin, the film's African-American producer, admits more inclusion is needed. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
In other entertainment news, actor Chris Pratt has started his own production company called Indivisible Productions with a unique mission, he says, to bridge the growing divide in our country and the world. In an Instagram post on Tuesday, Pratt gave a quick sneak peek at his new production offices, showing framed movie posters along with other television and movie memorabilia. Pratt provides the music and amusing commentary in the video. Here, take a listen.
Hooked on a feeling, I'm high on believing.
He says it's Indivisible Productions, from the idea of one nation under God, indivisible. Good for him. By the way, that post has been viewed by almost 3.9 million people. Boy, he's really going to town there. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. Thanks again. Have a great day.